if you would please introduce yourself, maybe make some opening remarks, and we'll take questions.
Yeah, Roy Manning, as she stated, outside linebackers, assistant head coach for defense. Really excited to be here. Have some familiarity, obviously, in the Pac-12 at two other schools, but couldn't be more ecstatic to be here. Father, two little ones, twins. They were actually born here in Los Angeles, so this is a special place to me. And just looking forward to get going, working with our players and this program and getting this thing going in the right direction. So.
Start with Ryan right here in front.
Ryan Young, TrojanSports.com. We just talked to Brian about his connection with Alex, kind of have the same background. How has your relationship evolved over all those years, and what's the value of having that history together?
It's been great. Had the opportunity to meet Alex 6 or 7 years ago when he took over at Washington State. And from the day I met him, I knew a few things about him, that he was highly driven, highly motivated, is wired, what I would say, the right way in terms of a person that players would want to be led by or gravitate towards, and really have hit it off since then and being able to implement this defense now. This will be our third stop, so extremely comfortable with Alex and with the schematics and so forth and so on of the defense. And again, just looking forward to getting that to our players and getting them up to speed so they can also, have that shared vision with what we expect when they hit the field.
Dan?
Hey there, Roy. Dan Greenspan with the Associated Press. We hear the different titles, outside linebackers, nickels. Just what is that going to mean in terms of sort of the on-field and meeting room interactions? How do different guys, your interactions with them going to take shape, depending on, like, you could have corners maybe working with you as nickels, or outside linebackers maybe altering between defensive line pass rush, and just how does that all work?
Sure, that's a great question. I know people are probably wondering that. At Washington State, my title was outside backers just alone, but I coached the nickels and the rushes, which are two different positions. But schematically, the structure of the defense was a 3-4, and so a lot of the things that they did, although different positions, there was a lot of carryover as it relates to the coverage aspects of things. And so what that inevitably allowed me to do was be able to transition, as you know, the last few years into coaching in the secondary as well, having that background. Now here, obviously the defense has evolved as the years have gone on, and the different things we do with certain positions and all the ins and outs of that. I won't bore you with that, but the point is the point. I've had the luxury to coach 3 different positions in this defense, and so just very familiar with the front and the back end. And so as we work out and figure out who will fit where and what's the best way to approach this current roster and how that fits into what we're going to be able to do schematically, we'll iron out specifically what players will be with what coach and things of that nature. But confident, just like at every stop, that we'll make sure that each one of those positions are being coached hard and that they have the expectation of the standard that aligns with ours. Now, I'm looking forward to obviously getting back more into the front, like we talked about with outside backers, specifically it's the position I played. But again, we'll iron out all the details with the players, and as we continue to move through, this spring, who exactly will be working with what position. But you got to know it all. That's one thing I know in this profession. So.
Head coach, John Martinez, USCFootball.com, 24/7 Sports. Congratulations on the new gig.
Thank you.
To kind of pick up where you left off there with the evolution of the overhangs and sort of how that position has changed over the years, and you coach cornerbacks, and now you're able to bring a lot of the techniques and the things that you know from a secondary standpoint over maybe the outside linebackers and those guys. How has that changed? What have you seen from the offenses that has pushed you to have to put more emphasis on those guys that are out in the hash marks?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest difference is just obviously it's not a unique thing to be a nickel defense in today's game, right? So everybody, very rarely do you find teams that play with 3 linebackers in the box, you know what I mean? And so we've had to evolve as offenses have evolved and continue to challenge you to make plays in space and spread you out and use tempo and things of that nature. And so, again, more of it is specific to schematically whether you're going to be a middle open team or a single high team, what coverages and things you use. That directly affects how you play that overhang guy, that nickel. Again, you can call him what you want, outside backer, nickel, you know what I mean? But the point is,
What do you guys call him?
we call him a nickel. We call him a nickel because body type wise, he would be considered more of a secondary guy out of that corner safety mold to play that nickel spot. But again, if you play a certain team, you may want to sub a bigger nickel or bigger body into that position, which typically hasn't been the case as of late, just because of most offenses are heavy 11 personnel, 10 personnel, where they're only using 1 tight end, and even in that circumstance, that tight end is an athletic receiving type of threat. But again, our big thing defensively is we want to be adaptable to whatever we're getting and not be pigeonholed into being out personneled or out packaged by a team. And so there are a lot of carryover to playing the positions in this defense. I'm sure you spoke with Alex. Our safeties have to know nickel, our nickels have to know corners, and et cetera, et cetera. And so we do that again, so it can always, in our mind, be advantage defense.
Right, Eric McKinney with WeAreSC.com. You've had a couple stops in the Pac-12, a couple other places where you've recruited against USC. What was kind of your perception of USC during that time, and what have you maybe learned about the school in the short time you've been here?
Yeah, I was a hater, man. And again, when you think of the landscape of college football and where each and every team is situated, and again, having this experience in the Pac-12 helped me understand that the Pac-12, predominantly the schools are in large markets. If you compare that to the rest of college football, that's literally the opposite, where most college programs, with some exceptions, are in small markets, small towns. And so, the thought is, when I've been at other places, hey, USC, you're in this major market, this major city, this hustle and bustle, and just a mess of a city, so to speak. And then you get here, and it's really pretty neat how this campus sits near downtown, but it's not a downtown feel. You know what I mean? What they've done with this campus, obviously USC Village is one of the most unique setups, I'd say, in college football anywhere. Where you think you're hopping on buses or using public transportation. I mean, you literally, you're doing quite the opposite. It's skateboards and what are those things called? Scooters and things like that. And really, you don't have to use those to get around. So I've been pleasantly surprised. And again, I think it's an advantage for us now being, I guess, on the inside and on this side of things, seeing it. So, but you're always going to have that in recruiting, where everybody's going to try to look for things where I look at it, or we look at it, as a positive to be in a market like this, where people may try to use those negative things against you. But it'd be a hard thing to try to beat once someone actually gets here and they see it like, okay, this is legit, this is a good deal here. So.
I'm curious, with the prominence of the portal more and more, what has that done to the job of coach? What kind of dynamic has that and responsibilities that you maybe didn't have?
One thing it does is you can't cut ties with recruits now, in terms of the days of signing day and you don't get the guy you want. You go on Twitter, you unfollow them, all those things, and you move on, wish them luck, whatever it is. But you kind of lay that relationship, so to speak, to rest. And now, just knowing the potential with the portal, you could have the same kid in a year or two down the line. That has to change that recruiting process for you. in the interim or whatever it is. So I think that's a difference. I think that you have to, obviously, as you're evaluating high school kids, you have to compare them or, stand them up next to not just high school kids in their class, but now, a transfer guy that you could get in the portal. Is this kid in this 2023 class, will he be better than a guy that I can get a year from now or 2 years from now in the portal? That's a real question. And again, not to speak for anybody else, but the chances are he's probably not, because those guys that are in the portal are going to have a year of college experience, whether that's maturity, whether that's physical development, you know what I mean? And again, it doesn't probably affect that top cut or that top, whatever that number is, of high school prospects, but some of those guys that's on the line or, that next tier of guys, obviously we're all seeing it. It probably can affect their options as it has like with the junior college. So I just think you just have to be way more aware in the recruiting process. You got to vet them more, and you have to make sure that the kid you do sign, particularly if he's out of high school, he better be a good one. Otherwise, you're going to want to out-recruit him.
Coach, super credit to this great broadcast. You mentioned the scheme, the fit of 3-4, and you talked about having your hands on the nickels. Is it something that you guys are up to where you might recruit a safety, but then bring them down to that nickel position so that when you face those teams that stay in 11 or like fast pace, you can leave a guy like that on the field that can cover, but also be heavy in the run? Or is it more of a that's an inside back that can keep our safeties back and play versus, I guess, who we're going against that?
No, it's a great question, and it's exactly just that. And again, I don't think it's a secret, but our recruiting profile is recruit guys that can do multiple things. You won't find us recruiting a safety that looks like me. That you say, hey, if it doesn't work out as safety, he'll be a linebacker. Well, we don't want to recruit that guy, to be honest with you, because again, what you're really saying is he's probably a safety that can't run very well. Right? And so again, we have been in our past just very cognizant of recruiting guys that fit the profile to say, okay, this guy can be a safety, a nickel, or a corner. And that's just based on, what does he do best as opposed to what he's limited, enough to do or can't do. And again, to your point, the majority of college football is 10 and 11 personnel. And so as you've seen the last, I guess, 5, 6, 8 years, you've seen those bigger safeties now be linebackers. You've seen those bigger linebackers now be edge guys, and not just in college football, but also in the NFL. You've seen that the shift of body types and where you play guys is completely different. With a guy like Taylor Mays, man, that's a unicorn right there. That's the exception, right? And so, yeah, we have evolved that way, and I think that's important.
Last one, Mark.
Coach, going back to your days of hating USC, when you were recruiting, obviously USC's in a big city, you were recruiting to smaller markets sometimes. How do you compare discipline coaching at a place like USC to maybe a smaller college environment school?
That's a great question. And again, I don't hate USC. I've always had a huge respect for USC. Actually, played in a couple Rose Bowls in college and had the opportunity to practice in the Coliseum one year, which was a weird deal since we were playing USC. But I think that there's challenges on both sides. I think that the initial thought is, hey, how am I going to keep a kid focused in a city this massive, in a place where so many moving parts are going on, et cetera, et cetera. I think the natural thought is it'd be harder to do that. But, having been in, the exact opposite type of market, I think there's challenges on both sides. Sometimes when there's not a lot to do, that means you look for more things to get into. You know what I mean? You find yourselves getting into more trouble sometimes in, what you would think is a smaller market. Obviously, eyes are always on you as a college athlete. But, I think that in a smaller market, you can't do anything without someone seeing you, or, you know, you stick out like a sore thumb. Where I think the advantage of being in a larger market like this is you can separate from being the oh, he must play football stereotype when you walk around a town, when you go out to eat with your friends, like I'm sure our players do in this great city. They can just be who they are, right, without having to always feel those eyes on them, even though they may be. So I think it's an advantage to be in a market like this. And so I use that in recruiting against anyone that would say the opposite. So hope that answers your question.
Thank you, Coach. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Fight on.
Thanks, Roy.
Yep.